we are going to go and talk about first the best ways to handle prospective investor calls. We're going to cover that, how to build out a funnel to properly respond to your prospective investors, and how we're using technology. I'm going to share with you the panel inside of our process here that we're using at passiveinvesting.com to handle these calls and these investors. And then what is the one question that every prospective investor is thinking that they will never ask you, and they don't even know that they're asking it because it's subconscious, that they should ask it because it's subconscious, but everybody does it. And then what are the most common questions that prospective investors will ask during a call? So I make a lot of phone calls every single week. We receive about 40 to 50 new investor leads into our database every single month. And so I'm on phone calls with them all the time, building relationships with them and creating that prior existing relationship to satisfy the SEC requirements on a 506B as in Bravo offering as well. So I want to first cover a couple of things in regards to that first question. So the first we talked about was what is the best, learning the best way to handle those prospective investor calls. So one of the things that I learned recently is that I used to spend, 30, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour on a phone call with an investor. And, I'd start off the call by talking about me and my background and my group. And then I'd go through each one of our managing partners and talk about their backgrounds and things like that. And I would spend a lot of time on these calls. And what I found out was that, number one, I was repeating myself quite a bit. And I was repeating myself, and I was like, if I'm doing the same thing over and over and over, why don't I create a process for that? And that's really where my business mind comes into place is I feel like if there's something that's repetitive, well, let's put a process in place. And so one of the things that I have my passive investors do before I jump on a call with them is they'll actually watch a video of all three of the partners and our roles and our responsibilities in the company and some of the high level specifics on the returns. It's a short video. It's like 10 minutes long, so it's not too long, but it's enough to be able to give them that information. And then they're already educated on that stuff before they get on the call with me. And then what that does is it allows me to be able to focus on them and answer questions about what they have. And so the reason why this title has call scripts and quotes is because I don't think any call when it comes to these investors should be scripted. Obviously, there can be a flow to the call and a process that you follow or a template that you follow, but to actually script these calls out, I think is actually poor form. And this is coming from somebody that likes phone scripts. And I used to, when I was in right out of high school, I worked for a company that I was a telemarketing salesperson and quickly moved up to the ranks in a matter of about 5 weeks into a telemarketing sales trainer. And so I was doing sales training for people who were on the phones every single day, doing 70, 80 phone calls every single day. And we had very dialed in scripts that they had to follow. And so a lot of these scripts, a lot of those scripts, but this call scripting, I also take those call scripts and I implement them into my medical practices and other businesses that I have when we follow up with patients or customers. And I think it's important to have them, but I think in this particular venue, you don't really need, or you shouldn't be doing a call script, because what you should be doing, which is what I do, is I have a little notepad. I don't have it here. It's actually, I have a couch across the room here. And on my couch, I actually have a little notepad that I have to take myself away from the computer that I'm in right now. So this is actually set up. So I have this computer here, and I'll actually take this real quick. You can see. So I have actually wrong camera. Let me switch my camera around here and you can see. I'm going to switch to this camera here. So you can see this is actually, I'm going to flip this around, get a little behind the scenes. This is my camera. Okay. My computer screen. You can see over there I have my desk, and you can see my notepad sitting there because I was taking investor calls today. And that's actually my workout bag. I want to play some racquetball this afternoon. And of course you can see my light box there, but also pictures from my kids. So anyway, that's my couch, that's my notepad. So I have to get around my desk, outside of my desk, and actually take myself and focus on that call and focus on that investor so I can focus on them. And that to me was a big game changer for me, is just taking myself outside of this desk and going around it and standing behind somewhere else where I don't have emails popping up or things that are on my desk. 'Cause I usually have multiple screens up and I could be quite distracted if I'm on the phone call. And so I want to make sure I give that investor my full attention and focus, because it's where I can connect with them the most as well. And so I'll make notes as to what they're saying. I'll usually start off the call and I'll say, well, what I'd like to do, John, is have you get started by telling me a little bit about you and yourself and your background and where you are right now in your life. And just let them talk. They'll usually talk for 3 to 5 minutes about their background and how they got into this, how they got into the ability to be able to invest. And they'll usually talk a little bit about their work experience, as well as they'll talk about their real estate experience. And then I'll usually want to ask them some follow-up questions about, well, how did you hear about our group? And then instead of me launching into this whole long dissertation about our group, because I know they've already watched the video, because our software actually lets us know that they watched the video, which is pretty cool. And I'll show you how that works as well. Whenever they watch that video, now when I'm on the call with them, I can focus on them. And so once they've told me a lot about them, I'll ask follow-up questions about that. I had a person recently that told me that they're in the IT field. Well, that's great. Well, there's a lot of space in the IT, so I want to get to know my investors more. And so I'll ask them, well, what kind of IT are you in? What company do you work for? And so it's really important to really try to find those deep connections and not be very superficial with your investors, because they want to feel like they're not just a number. They want to feel like they're actually part of the family and actually part of an actual partner in some of these projects, so that they can invest in multiple deals. And so you want to make sure that you're focusing on them and turning the tables. And then after that, so after I've gone through that piece of it, I'll turn around and I'll say, now I could go into some more details about what we do, but I know you've already watched the video on our group and wanted to see what questions do you have specifically about our group that I can help you with. And so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here and talk about the most common questions that I see from our prospective investors. And I have 3 of them. So the number one question that I get is about track record. What is your track record in the multifamily space? And so I tell them my track record. And so you have to make sure that you have that track record and that dialed in, right? You have to know how to talk about your track record. And one of the things I lean on very heavily is my background in business. Because at the end of the day, these are what we're buying. We're buying businesses when it comes to multifamily. And so when we're buying businesses, you need to make sure that you understand business and that there's somebody on that sponsorship team that actually knows how to run a business effectively. Because at the end of the day, we are not buying assets. We're buying businesses that just so happen to have an asset associated with it. So you have to know how to run a business. You have to know how to manage people. You have to know how to put in systems and procedures and processes in place to make sure that you can pivot whenever you need to pivot, and make sure you all have certain KPIs and targets that you're shooting for, so that you know when to shift as necessary. So making sure that you have your track record in place, and even if you might not have a lot of experience in real estate, you can talk about your background in business or other success in your job or whatever, but you have to talk about that background to get that investor comfortable with investing with you. Because again, they won't invest with you unless they know, like, and trust you. So you have to do that as well. The second thing that is the most common is returns. So obviously that's a pretty common thing is returns. The returns are very, very crucial and very, very important for investors to kind of see, and they're gauging kind of where you usually come in. We're usually a pretty transparent group in what we do. So even on our website, if you go there, you'll see some of the returns that we actually project not on each specific deal, but we have certain targets that we're looking for when we're doing our underwriting that is actually listed there on the website. So you can actually check that out as well. The last thing that they always ask for is, I ask them in the very beginning, how they got into this space in their life to be able to invest. So the question that they usually will ask me is, well, how did you get into this? And why did you get into this? And that story that you tell about how you got into it and why you got into it is crucial when it comes to building relationships with these investors. So you need to make sure that you tell that story, because people will connect with you if you tell your story, and it's very, very important. I actually have a book. I'm trying to see if it's actually easily accessible on my bookshelf here. I might actually be in the process of, might be at the house, but there is a book that is about storytelling. I think it's the Storyteller Secret, I think is what it's called. I'll have to look it up and see. I don't think I actually see it on my bookshelf here. No, I don't. I'll look that book up and kind of see, but I don't have it readily accessible because I wasn't planning on talking about it, but it just came up. So things come to my head and I just have to talk about them. Hopefully you don't mind. The last thing I wanted to jump forward to is the one question that every prospective investor is thinking about. This all goes in line with, yes, it's that. Yes, Matt, I just saw you put it on there. Donald Miller. Yes, I think it's called the Storyteller Secret or something along those lines. I can't remember, but if you know the name of it, type it in there in the chat box so everybody can see, and I'll also announce it for those who are watching the recording here. Story Brand is what it's called by Donald Miller. Okay, something along those lines. So the one question that every prospective investor is thinking about is this. So what I want you to do right now, everybody on the call with me, I want you to do this with me as I'm doing this, okay? I want you to take your finger and I want you to put it on top of your head, okay? So go ahead and do it. I see you. You're not doing it. So you need to go ahead and do it. Just take your finger. All right, take your finger, put it right on top of your head. You won't forget this if you do this exercise with me. So take your finger, put it right on top of your head like this. And what this is this is an antenna that your prospective investors are always walking around with on their head. And this antenna is tuned in to one radio station. That one radio station is WIIFM. What's in it for me? And yes, that might be a silly exercise to do that, but you will never forget that on the next investor call that you have, because investors are always there thinking, what's in it for them? And you have to be able to meet them where they are to figure out what they are looking for in order for you to meet that. Because if somebody's not investing with you, it's probably because you're not meeting something that they're looking for. So one of the things that you should probably be doing is asking your investors why they're not investing in your deals and getting that feedback from them, and also sending out surveys to your investors as well. It's very, very, very important. So when you're on a call with an investor, you should always be thinking about that antenna on the top of their head and them being tuned in to WIIFM. What's in it for me? All right, so let's dive into some of this fun stuff, okay? So I got about probably 10 more minutes of me rolling on here, and I'm not going to have a lot of time at the end for questions and answers, maybe about 5 minutes worth, because I do have something else that I got to get to in about probably 15 minutes. But I do want to show you this funnel that we have built out so you can actually see what it actually looks like, because it's pretty cool. So we're going to first go to our website, passiveinvesting.com. And let me share my screen here so you can actually see it. So there we go. So you should be able to see my screen here, which is the passiveinvesting.com, clicking the join passive investing club. Other ways that people can get to it is if they click on our properties. They can also see it every single page there on the right-hand side. There is this form that they can actually fill out that will be part of getting part of our passive investor club or passive investor list. So anywhere they go, whether it's on the properties page, the strategy page, it's always there. It's always on the top right-hand corner. So when you're building out your site, you want to make sure it's always accessible and available anywhere you are, so that anywhere that the investor is on your page, so they can easily register to get on your investor list. So somebody types in a message, types in their information into here. Let's just dive right into this software. So we're using a software program, and this is the back end, okay? So I'm really opening this up for you guys so you can kind of see what we're doing with our funnel here. This is something that we've built out, and this is just one of the automations that we have into it, but this is when they fill out this form. And so this is a software program called Active Campaign, and some of you might have heard about it before, and we were using MailChimp before, integrating it with a software called Contactually, and it was just disjointed, and this really wasn't working as well as we wanted. And so this is what happens when somebody clicks on and fills out that investor form. So you can see here, this is an automation is what this is called. So the contact submits the form, and it has to meet two criteria. So when they fill out the form, we're asking them questions. So if they're asking, are you a U.S. citizen? And then they say yes to it. And if they say, yes, I can invest at least a minimum of $50,000, then that investor is going to go and come over here where it says yes. And they're going to be sent an email. And I'm going to show you that email here in a minute so you can actually see what we're sending out. You can kind of see a preview of it right there. But then it actually adds them into what's called a deal, which is actually, we have a pipeline called our new investor leads. And my assistant follows up with those people by calling them right away. So you can see here, they get put into this pipeline called, or this deal, this deal in the pipeline called, you can actually see it here. It's called, the pipeline is new investor lead. And it puts them into a stage called Call to Schedule with Dan. and then it's assigned to my assistant, Ann Shadrack. Okay. And then what happens from there is a task is actually automatically created to call that patient. Sorry, it's a Freudian slip. To call that investor within 1 day. Okay. And then what happens is once she takes that investor and puts them into the next section of the pipeline, and they go to from a status of left voicemail message, then they get an email. So this email should actually be down here. They'll get an email that actually says, because this isn't actually fully fleshed out towards the end here, but they'll get an email that says, hey, Ann, my name is Ann. I tried to reach out to you, and I'm going to show you that email so you can kind of see how it's structured and how it's set up. But here's the link to to Dan's schedule. If for some reason you can't, I try to call you. I'll show you the email. I don't know the whole thing. I'll show you the email in just a minute. Let me go through the rest of it. If they don't meet those type 2 criteria, then they go over here, and what happens is they have to meet 2 other criteria. They have to say, if they said, no, I'm not a U.S. citizen, but I can still invest $50,000, then they go into this other pipeline where we send them an email telling them the criteria for them to be able to invest internationally or as an international investor. So there's certain things that they have to do that in order for them to invest with us. And then once that email is sent out to them, you can see this little link brings them back to the stage right here and brings them down into the funnel for her to call and schedule them. Now, if they don't meet those 2 criteria, then it comes down here to the next line where they meet the next criteria, which is, are you able to invest a minimum of $50,000? And if they say no, then they automatically get put into this email here that says, thank you for your inquiry. Unfortunately, we're unable to accept you as one of our passive investors because you don't meet the minimum requirements for investing in some of our projects. If this is to change in the future, please let us know. And then after no, or yes, on this one, it actually just ends the automation. So this is kind of the fleshed out version of this automation. And I also want to show you the email that we send out so you can actually see that. Let me switch it to a new share here so you can see that. So here is the email that the prospective investor actually gets in their email box. So it's a picture. Have our logo on it. Have our group photos at the top, and then it talks about thank you for your interest in investing with our group, passiveinvesting.com. My name is Ann Shadrack. I'm Dan Handford's assistant. You submitted your details on our website. I tried to schedule you over the phone. I did get a hold of you. I told you my voicemail, basically, I was going to send you this email. So he wants to jump on a phone call with you, discuss your investment goals before he can add you to the investor list to make sure you're a good fit. Here's a link to the calendar. So this is actually a Calendly link to my calendar where an investor can schedule on my calendar directly. And then if for some reason they don't see any time that works on that calendar, because I know a lot of our investors are professionals that have jobs that sometimes prevent them from jumping on the times that I'm available on that calendar. And so they can call her or text her and find another time that's suitable to speak with me. And at the bottom down here, of course, it gives them her information. There is a link to this video that I told you about. And it says here in the PS, click the video below to watch a special video to learn more about our 3 managing partners. And when they click on this, it's set up so that their contact in our system automatically gets tagged that lets us know that they watched this video. So anytime they click on any of these links, I can see if they clicked on this or whatever. But once they schedule in here, it will automatically take them and let us know inside this software that they have been scheduled, so it can take them off of her list to follow up to get them scheduled with me. And if for some reason they cancel that appointment, that call with me, then it also will kick them back out and put them back into the funnel so she can continue to follow up with them to make sure that we get the investor on a phone call with me. So that's the process that we're using right now. It's really kind of been neat and how it's been neat and kind of cool how it's been merging and morphing over the last couple of months. And so I wanted to kind of give you that little, behind the scenes look into how we are building out our funnel on the back end and what we're doing. So we're using a technology called Active Campaign. You can go to activecampaign.com to figure that out. I don't have any affiliate links, so I'm not promoting them because I want to promote them to get remuneration or anything. So I don't even know if they have an affiliate campaign on it, but I've been liking their software so far. They have an onboarding specialist that we work with right now. It's been really good with us because it can be quite overwhelming in the very beginning when you first get on there, because there's quite a bit of customization that you have to do on the front end. But once it's been customized and once it's been going, it's quite cool to kind of see how it all works on the back end. And it also sends automated text messages to our prospective investors. And when we have a project or a deal that we're ready to present, it can also send out those automated text messages as well to investors that are on our list, that have opted in to that list. And so it keeps track of a lot of different things, and it's really kind of cool to kind of see how that it's actually merged into what it is today. So that's all I have for you today. We're coming up right on the bottom of the hour, if you will. So I have a couple of more minutes here left. So if you have any questions and you want to type them into the chat box there or into the Q&A box, I'd be glad to answer a few questions for you regarding this process and what we're doing, so I can help you in any way further. Next week, we'll have another webinar. We might actually have a special guest. I'm trying to finalize something first, but that's pretty much it. All right. So, and I'm assuming, so this question's coming in from Tate. He's asking, do you have any good cocktail party scripts for like an informal script? And the question, I would say, one of the things I always say about investor relations is that it has the word relations in there on purpose, because you are trying to build a relationship with these people. And so I don't think you're going to meet somebody, at a cocktail party and all of a sudden tell them about what you do and say, hey, I have a deal and I want you to invest $100,000. And they're going to open up their wallet and invest with you. And I don't think that's what you're saying. But one of the things that you should consider when you're going to those types of parties is that don't go to just one. Go to multiple of these parties, so you're showing up and they're seeing you in multiple of these events. And the more you show up and the more you try to talk about them, the better it will be. And so when you have conversations with people at these cocktail parties, get to know them. Remember, even at a cocktail party, whether they know whether or not they want to invest with you, they have that WIIFM up on their head. They're tuned into that station. Even if they don't know that they want to invest with you, they have that up there, because when you start to talk to them about your stuff, guess what they're saying? Well, what's in it for me? And so once you start to ask somebody else at a cocktail party, hey, what do you do? Tell me what you do. The logical progression is for them to ask you what you do. And that's when you can jump into there and start to talk to them a little about what you do. And it's really not trying to hard sell them into getting them to invest, but it's basically saying, hey, well, I actually am a multifamily real estate syndicator where I actually invest in large apartment complexes or whatever asset size that you are in, and then tell them the kind of returns that you're getting. Okay. Talk about it in realistic terms. And then they're going to eventually, if they're interested, start to ask you questions in return about, oh, really? So like, how did you get into that? And what did you do? How do you do it? And they'll start to ask some questions that that they're more of what we would call a buying question. So I got several different things that came through here on the process. And let's see, at what point do you share all the players and fees, commissions, payouts for investor information? So obviously, all players and fees, commissions, pound. So Alicia's asking about, at what point do you share all I'm assuming probably that the payouts and the fees and the various things like that to the investors on various projects. I guess it says deal details and exit and contingency strategy. So Alicia, one of the things that I did on my calls in the very beginning was I used to go into a lot of the details about that stuff on calls. And I rarely go into the details on that now unless an investor asks me about it, because very few of our investors actually ask any questions about that kind of stuff. And so if you get to the point of having to ask those questions, you just answer them, because chances are, they might not even invest with you anyway. So just answer them honestly, because I'm a big believer in just answering honestly. And the people that will be attracted to you will invest with you, and those that won't. But I used to get into a lot of the weeds of talking about the deal specifics, and a lot of investors, when they're on those initial calls, don't really care about that. Obviously, when you're taking a phone call with an investor and they're talking about a specific deal, then yes, you can talk about a lot of those particular deals and those particular structures. Let's see. Marina has a question about, do you keep track of the people who cannot invest $50,000? Because sometimes at the end of the deal, you might have a slot that's less than $50,000. And sometimes these people just want to test water and can invest $50,000 next time. So the question that I asked though on the call, on the actual form is, can you invest, or do you have the ability to invest? And so if they don't have the ability to invest, then our rule in our group is that we don't accept anybody unless they can at least do a $50,000 minimum. So we don't allow someone to come in at less than 50,000. So I've even had somebody reach out to me and say, well, what if you have the last 25,000 available? Then can I invest 25,000? And according to the operating agreements that we have set for our projects, we have a hard minimum at 50,000. And so what happens is that we as an operator has to actually come up with that extra 25,000, which we usually do if that's the case. Or well, another one of our investors might be on backup and say, hey, I have another 50,000 or whatever that I want to invest, and it can do that as well. All right, so we got quite a few questions in here. I only have about 3 minutes left, so let me see if I can get through a couple of these as best I can. What resource do you use to manage the passives for each deal, their PPMs and other paperwork? We use a software called Airtable actually to do that. It's a spreadsheet software and manage a lot of it inside of there. We do not currently use a portal system. We feel like right now that none of the ones that we've seen have really solved a lot of the problems that we have right now because we don't really have a lot of issues. So if you have some questions about that and you want to discuss it further, I'm certainly happy to do that with you there, Ed. All right. Let's see. Rod, I understand you don't want to work from a script, but do you have a high-level outline that you work from? Yeah, so Rodney, that's kind of what I was trying to go over is that high-level outline of, getting them to talk about themselves first, and then getting them to talk to me about how they heard about me, and then going into seeing what kind of questions they have about for us. And then from there, I usually, when I get off the phone call with them, I'll send them a text message with my contact card so they can easily add me to their phone. So if they have any future questions or whatever in the future, they can call or text. And then I'll also send them like a follow-up email, just letting them know, thanks for coming on the call. I really appreciate it. And then kind of going from there. So good question there. Let's see. First reaction I get from sophisticated investors is to be careful and beware. How do you go around that? Buyer beware of, I'm not really sure what the question there is, Alicia, but we can discuss that a little bit later. I only have about a minute left on here. Do you do an accreditation form? So the accreditation form is done when we actually have a deal. So once there is a deal, they do have to sign up on that form. And if we're doing a 506 seal, I'll have to get accredited. Do you allow 50,000 for the first deal and 25,000 for future deals? So no, Denise, we do not. So on all of our deals, I know some groups do that where if you've invested with them before, you can come in at 25, but on all of our projects, because of the way our operating agreements are set up, the hard minimum is 50,000, whether it's the first time you've invested with us or it's the 20th time you've invested with us. So we do have that hard minimum on there. Yes, the webinar has been recorded and it will be posted out for those of you who are interested in that. So that's a good question there as well. I know Bobby and Kanal have some questions on there. I can't answer those right now because I do have a hard stop here. But I want to thank you guys so much for being on here and asking some really good questions. And hopefully the information that I was sharing with you was very helpful. If you liked the information, it was helpful, go find your chat box and let me know so I know for sure that it was helpful for you. Trying to provide each week a different topic that provides some additional value to you. And I felt like showing you what we're doing and being very transparent with you it could be very helpful to you. So hopefully that process and that setup was helpful for you. Looking forward to the next webinar. So we're doing these weekly. So next week we will be doing another one. And so looking forward to that. I'm going to be in New York City, actually, for those of you who are on right now. I'm going to be in New York City on Thursday this week. So if you're in New York City this week on Thursday in the Midtown Manhattan area, shoot me over an email, dan@multifamilyinvestornation.com. We'd love to be able to meet up with you, have a cup of coffee, or also, jump and maybe have a lunch or a dinner. So looking forward to being out there and meeting with some of our other investors that have been with us on on prior projects. And thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.